Welcome back, everyone. Now, this is not one of our usual happy episodes where we're bringing awesome content to you. So we're going to cut straight to the chase on this one.
But before we say anything, we want to acknowledge the lives lost and the families shattered by the recent attack. Our hearts are with you, and no words can take that pain away. What happened was absolutely horrific, and it deserves honest accountability and solutions that actually address the cause. What concerns us deeply is that what's being proposed now has nothing to do with preventing terrorism and everything to do with diverting attention away from it.
First, let me be clear. What happened was horrific. It should never have happened. And the people responsible and the systems that failed to stop it must be held to account. But what I'm about to talk about has nothing to do with honouring those victims and everything to do with redirecting blame. In the days that followed, we were told the answer was a national gun buyback and a so-called 10-point plan. On the surface, it sounds decisive. It sounds reassuring. It sounds like leadership. But when you actually read what's been proposed, you realise something is very uncomfortable. None of it would have stopped what happened. The plan doesn't focus on intent. It doesn't focus on radicalisation. It doesn't focus on intelligence failures. Instead, it focuses on lawful people because they're easy to regulate, easy to pressure, and they're easy to blame. So let's slow this down for a moment and look at what's actually been put on the table, not emotionally, but honestly. These are the measures being talked about, either directly by government or actively pushed for adoption in response to this tragedy. And every Australian deserves to understand them before they're quietly normalised. Recreational hunting is a genuine reason. Hunting would no longer be accepted for a reason to hold a firearms licence. The attacker was not a recreational hunter and did not act through any hunting pathway. Further restrict high capability firearms. I don't even know what that really means. That would bring additional bans or tighter controls on certain categories of firearms, already heavily regulated. The type of firearm was not the determining factor, intent, access was. End of metropolitan home storage for non-occupational firearms. People in cities would no longer be allowed to store firearms at home unless for work. Crazy. Storage location not cause, escalate or prevent the attack. Limit number of firearms per individual. This would put caps on how many firearms a licensed individual can legally own. The number of firearms owned had no relevance to this incident, none whatsoever. Prohibit the use of firearms by children. Ending junior participation under supervision for sport, hunting or education. There was no connection whatsoever between a supervised junior participation and terrorism. None. This is ludicrous. Introduce more frequent licence renewals. This would mean shorter licence periods with more frequent reapproval requirements. The issue was not licence duration, it was intelligence and intervention failures. Establish national firearms oversight and reporting. This would be centralised monitoring and reporting structures across all states. Oversight systems already exist, and these were not the failure in this case. None of that is attributed to this case. None. End unlicensed shooting. The crackdowns on informal or unlicensed use, even where historically permitted in the past. That would all end. Gone. The attacker was not operating within lawful or informal shooting communities. Ban political donations from the firearms industry. So we're back to banning again. Ban, ban, ban. Preventing lawful businesses from donating to political parties. Political donations have no bearing on extremist violence or individual intent. None. Establish a National Firearms Safety Council, a new advisory body to guide firearms policy. Advisory councils do not stop active threats. intelligence and enforcement action does. Taken together, none of these points addresses radicalisation, terrorist networks, intelligence failures, or the warning signs. Not one bit. They address compliance. They address visibility. They address people who already follow the rules. That's what it does. I've spent my entire lifetime around firearms. Not in chaos, not in anger, but in structure, responsibility, and respect. I was taught safety before I was taught skill. Accountability before ownership. Community before individualism. Firearms were never about power. They were about discipline, tradition, and shared responsibility. I was raised in a culture where safety came first, always. Where training wasn't optional, where responsibility was earned and maintained. I've watched the system evolve, and I've complied with every change. Every registry, every inspection, and every requirement. And now, after decades of doing everything right, I'm being told my legacy is the problem. The proposed buyback and so-called 10-point plan doesn't just remove objects, it erases a lifetime of lawful participation. And it tells people like me that compliance, training, and contribution count for absolutely nothing. The legacy didn't create violence, it helped prevent it. This buyback doesn't remove risk, it removes history, it removes education, it removes the structured pathways that keep people safe. You don't make society safer by dismantling the people who already follow all of the rules.
So for me, this isn't theoretical. This is about how we live. This is about how we raise our kids, and this is about how we pass on our values. For our family, and for thousands of families across Australia, hunting isn't a headline nor a stereotype. It's time together in the bush. It's learning patience, resilience, and respect for the land. It's understanding where food comes from and taking responsibility for that. It's early mornings, it's long walks, it's quiet conversations, and coming home knowing exactly what went into putting food on our table. This affects how we teach our kids. Not just about firearms, but ethics, about safety, about conservation, and about self-control. It affects how we work, how we run our businesses, and how we contribute to our communities. Thousands of Australians have spent years building lawful businesses, education pathways, community networks, all around responsible participation, all compliant, all transparent, and all accountable. So one announcement, and a red pen dragged across it, without evidence, without consultation, and without addressing the actual real threat. This is not thoughtful policy. This is smoke and mirrors. Hunters, we're not the extremists. Families in the bush, we're not the ones putting people at risk. People who harvest their own food and respect the land, we're not the problem. This approach doesn't make Australia safer. It fractures communities. And these communities are already doing the right thing. And that's why this hurts us so deeply. I don't know. This is not the Australia I'm proud of.
Not at all.
So on that note, I want to talk about two parts of what's being proposed and what they actually mean for someone like me. The first is the ending of junior participation under supervision, whether that's for sports, shooting, hunting, or education. For me, that would mean losing the ability to hunt with my family and compete in competitions, which are the main things I enjoy doing. These activities aren't reckless or unsupervised. They're structured, controlled, and they're built around safety, discipline, and learning responsibility. Taking that away doesn't stop terrorism. It just removes a safe and positive pathway for young people like me who are learning to do the right thing. The second is cracking down on informal or unlicensed participation where it's historically been allowed. That affects me more than just individuals. It affects businesses, coaches, and community groups. It makes it harder for new people to enter the sport in a safe, supported way. And again, none of that has anything to do with acts of terrorism. People involved in hunting and shooting communities aren't extremists. They are families, they are mentors, and they are people passing on their skills, values, and respects for the lands. These changes don't address intent. They don't stop radicalisation, and they don't prevent violent acts. All they do is make it harder for young people like me to be involved in something positive, structured, and meaningful. And that's why it matters to me.
Let's be clear, this is not about guns. This is about a terrorist organisation. It's about radicalisation. It's about intelligence failures. It's about border control, monitoring, and intervention. Shifting focus to lawful firearms owners does not stop extremists. It distracts from asking why warning signs were missed, why systems failed, and why accountability is being avoided. We should be asking hard questions about governance and intelligence, including ASIO, not silencing communities that have done nothing wrong and everything right. Let's be very clear. This is not about guns. This is a terrorist act driven by ideology, enabled by intent, missed by systems. You do not stop extremism by punishing compliance. You stop it by identifying radicalisation, disrupting networks, and acting on intelligence. This is common sense. That means asking difficult questions about governance, oversight, and performance of institutions like ASIO, not redirecting public anger towards people who are easy to control. This focus on firearms is a diversion from accountability.
So what have we been doing? We've been writing. We've been writing to ministers, we've been writing to shadow ministers, we've been writing to crossbenchers, sometimes multiple times as new information comes out. We've been keeping these communications calm, clear, and in a manner that can be on the record. We've been responsible firearms owners.
100%. All right, I'm going to be the arsehole here. I am going to ask the hard question. Let's ask the question no one in government wants asked. No one. What do you think would have happened at Bondi if there were people present with concealed carry permits? Let's think about it for a moment. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. It took a good person with a gun to stop a bad person with a gun. Blaming an inanimate object for the intent behind its use is not just wrong, it's intellectually lazy and stupid. A firearm has no ideology, no hatred, no motive. Intent lives in people. And instead of focusing on intent, on radicalisation, on warning signs, on system failures, the government is going after the lowest hanging fruit. They're punishing the people they know will comply because it's easier than admitting failure. And it looks like action without courage or any accountability.
We want you to think about this. What if a red pen was drawn through something you love? Your sport, your culture, your family tradition. And you were told it was for safety, even though you had nothing to do with the harm that was caused. This moment isn't about compliance, it's about courage. Now is the time to speak, to write, to question, to demand solutions that actually protect Australians. Enough is enough. We won't stand for diversion, and we won't be silent. Now we're asking you to think, what if a red pen was dragged through the thing that you love, your sport, your culture, your livelihood, your family tradition, and you were told, yet again, it was just for safety, even though, yet again, you had nothing to do with the harm that was caused. This moment isn't just about guns, it's about precedence, because once compliance becomes a weakness, then no one's community will be safe.
Now is not the time to be quietly compliant. Now is the time for clear, calm resolve and principled resistance. We want you to write. Write to your ministers, write to your members, write to the crossbenchers. We want you to question what is being proposed. We want you to engage with your communities. We need to demand solutions that actually protect Australians. Enough's enough. We won't stand for diversion, and we will not be silent.